Hello everyone, welcome to the Sapphire Bear Tavern. I'm Anthony, the owner of this fine establishment. I hope you're all having a good day, and if not, maybe I can help you forget your troubles for a bit. We're kicking off the inaugural episode with Sly Cooper and the Thievious Racoonous, a 3D platformer developed by Sucker Punch and published by Sony for the PlayStation 2. The initial idea started with Sucker Punch's previous game, Rocket Robot on Wheels. The main antagonist of that game was a raccoon, thus prompted them to make a raccoon the protagonist of their next game. Producer Brian Fleming stated in Sly Doubles the History of Sucker Punch for Game Informer, "The sight gag of a raccoon putting on a mask somehow seemed super funny to us. That was it. That was the decision to make Sly Cooper right there." They shopped around the idea to various publishers, eventually partnering with Sony for their then newly released PlayStation 2. In the same article, Fleming hoped the game would sell 500,000 copies and get a sequel. In reality, the game managed to sell 1 million copies overall, earned the greatest hits moniker, and spawned 3 sequels. The franchise is still beloved by fans, with many clamoring for another entry to this day. Not bad for a developer who made only one game prior, but that was over 20 years ago at the time of this episode. Is the game still worth playing today? Well, grab a drink, find a seat, and get cozy as we look at Sly Cooper and the Thievious Racoonous. The game opens in Paris with the titular Sly Cooper breaking into police headquarters to steal a file. On the way out, he runs into Inspector Carmelita Fox. During this meeting, it becomes apparent that they have a history as well as a love-hate relationship. By that, I mean he's into her, but she hates him. One daring escape later, and we're treated to Sly's backstory. It's revealed that he comes from a long line of thieves who only steal from other criminals, since there is no honor or challenge in stealing from anyone else. His family's prized possession is the Thievious Racoonous, a book chronicling the Cooper's exploits alongside techniques on how to become a master thief. On the night he was set to inherit the book, a gang called the Fiendish Five broke in, killed Sly's father, and tore it into several parts before scattering all over the globe. With no other family, Sly was placed in an orphanage. It's here he met his 2 best friends, Bentley and Murray, who eventually come to be known as the Cooper Gang. Together as adults, they're on a mission to take down the Fiendish Five and restore the Thievious Racoonous to its former glory, with Carmelita on their trail. The thing that stuck out to me was the plot is a bit darker and more serious than what you'd normally expect from a platformer. Usually the story in this genre is just an excuse to run, jump, and collect things. Maybe rescue someone. Here, Sly is trying to restore his family's legacy, knowing that if he fails, it ends with him. Not to mention, he witnessed his father's murder. That has some powerful stuff and helps the game stand out among its contemporaries. Despite what happened, Sly isn't the stereotypical hell-bent on revenge protagonist. He's charismatic with a code of honor that helps keep him grounded. Plus, he's not a dick to everyone. While the rest of the cast aren't super fleshed out, they have distinct enough personalities that differentiate themselves from each other. In fact, while the game takes itself seriously, it's not too serious that it can't have some funny moments. Sly will comically fly into the air and scream when set on fire, or hang out in the air for a few seconds before plummeting into a bottomless pit, Looney Tunes style. The various newspaper articles and the cutscenes following boss fights get more and more frustrated with Carmelita failing to catch Sly, and then there's the cutscene right before the fight against Mugshot where he complains that his part of the Thievious Racoonous had too many big words. Yet when Sly asks if he'll just hand it over, Mugshot is so offended that his rant causes him to say he feels transgressed and violated. You know, big words. Well, big for him. He is a strong, dumb character after all. While the game is not a laugh riot, it has enough comedic moments to keep the tone from getting too serious. Oh, and if you're wondering why the Fiendish Five didn't kill Sly as a child, don't worry, the game's got you covered. The first time you get to the second phase in the final fight against Clockwork, Sly asks the same question, to which Clockwork is all, "I wanted to prove to the world the Coopers were nothing without their precious book." Ah, arrogance. The insidious killer of many a villain. There is one thing that bothers me, though. Why does Carmelita get a different voice actor every game? Seriously, every game she sounds different. I can understand getting someone new for Thieves in Time, since that game came out 8 years after Honor Among Thieves. However, the original trilogy ran from 2002 to 2005, so what gives? If anyone has any idea, please let me know. Visually, the game employs a toon-shaded art style that I still think looks good over 20 years later. I also like that the opening of each episode gives us a quick rundown of which member the Fiendish Five will be facing, culminating in a title card. Feels like we're starring in a mini-movie. Further complementing the visuals are how each area plays out the backstory of each member of the Fiendish Five. For example, Raleigh was a rich man who turned to a life of crime out of boredom, with his role being the chief machinist. As such, his levels tend to be split between having machinery powering his base and having fine art pieces scattered throughout. Meanwhile, Ms. Ruby practices voodoo, allowing for her levels to have ghosts and other supernatural occurrences. Other unique set pieces include navigating giant rotating roulette wheels, running from a giant snake, and navigating a treacherous mountain passage. In other words, there are plenty of standout levels in this game. The game is broken up into 5 episodes with several levels each. The first 4 episodes drop you into a hub world with the goal of collecting all the keys required to take on the boss of that episode. Meanwhile, episode 5 is a straight level-to-level romp to the final showdown. I guess being the final boss allows you to break gaming conventions. Gameplay is a mix of platforming, stealth, and a handful of non-platforming challenges. The platforming is what you'd expect. Double jump, basic attack, coins for more lives, it's all here. You can also perform special moves such as shimming along ledges, climbing pipes, and swinging from hooks. Weirdly, the characters will straight up say, jump and press the circle button, or just press the circle button to perform these moves. It feels weird to have characters straight up reference the controls. Then again, this might be because I'm so used to text explaining how the controls work in-game. Plus, the explanations come across as natural conversation, so I can't knock it too hard. To help make the game stand out, the devs add some light stealth elements. And I do mean light because there are only a few levels that take advantage of the gimmick. In a perfect disguise, you'll have to use a barrel to protect from dart traps, as well as hide from guards and searchlights. The cardboard box is already taken. Then there's Boneyard Casino, where the opening has several gangster dogs patrolling the immediate area. Take one out, and the remaining guards will investigate the position. Other than that, the stealth feels a bit undercooked. Sure, there are searchlights and laser wires that sound an alarm when tripped, yet all this does is turn them into deadly obstacles to avoid until the alarm is destroyed. Great for platforming, not so much for stealth. Granted, this is a 3D platformer first and foremost, so I'm not expecting Splinter Cell here. Plus, the franchise leans a lot more into stealth, starting with Band of Thieves, so this can easily be chalked up as a first game problem. Adding to the thief motif, the platforming levels have safes that can only be opened by collecting all the clue balls in that level. These aren't too difficult to find, especially if you unlock the one safe in each episode that gives you the blueprints for the entire compound. This shows the location of all the clue balls when looking through the Binocucom. All other safes contain a page from the Thievious Racoonous, which grants Sly a new ability. For a book that was passed down by a long line of master thieves, the moves you can learn from these pages are a real mixed bag. On one hand, you've got abilities like the dive move, allowing you to quickly close the distance between you and an enemy, and water safety, which prevents damage from falling into water. On the other hand, you've got abilities like the roll, which supposedly makes you faster, but I didn't notice any difference, and slow down, that initially only works when you jump. It also slows down everything, including Sly. The pages you get from defeating bosses are a bit more useful. The ones that get the most mileage other than just fire jump, as well as the rail walk and slide, since these offers new ways to get around and expand the level design. Invisibility sounds like it would be useful for stealth until you realize you can't move while using it. There is an optional page that fixes it by making you move as fast as a turtle. While better than nothing, I didn't find much use for this. Finally, the gang's van gets equipped with a turret and a battering ram that both get used once each in the first 2 levels of the Cold Heart of Hate. Unsurprisingly, the former 2 are the only ones to make it into the sequels. The levels aren't too difficult for the most part. There aren't any crazy jumps and almost every enemy goes down in one hit. There are some exceptions to this though. For example, Vicious Voodoo has a few levels with giant tree monsters in them. These are the only enemies in the game that require more than one hit to kill. Hitting them separates the head from the body that will attack independent of each other, each requiring another hit. The first time you encounter one is in a tunnel with not much room to dodge. Shortly after, the game's all, "Oh, you managed to beat one? Well here, take on 2 at once." If anything, these are the closest the game has to mini-bosses. The final platforming level in the Cold Heart of Hate is also a bit more challenging. The goal is to get to the end to reach Carmelita's jetpack. However, you have to hustle since there is slowly rising lava. On top of that, there are quite a few jumps that require decent timing and plenty of obstacles in your way, such as gears you need to destroy to progress. Other than that, there's nothing here that will push you to your limits, especially since levels are pretty short, never lasting more than several minutes. That's not a bad thing, not every game needs to be nut-crunchingly hard. However, you're coming to this expecting a challenge, you will be disappointed, especially since the game will throw you a lucky charm if you die too many times in a row. Like enemies, Sly dies in one hit, costing him a life. So far, par for the course. What's odd is how it's handled. Normally in platformers, you collect 100 of X to get another life. Here, you collect 100 coins and you get a lucky charm, which grants Sly an extra hit. Collecting another 100 coins and the lucky charm turns into a golden lucky charm, granting another hit point for a total of 3. Collecting 100 coins after that starts granting lives. Not that it matters too much, since Tide of Terror has 4 lives and a lucky charm in the hub area that respawn whenever you enter and exit a level. If it was 1 or 2 extra lives scattered throughout each hub world, that would have made more sense. As it is, it kind of defeats the purpose of collecting coins. Then again, coins are easy to come by, so we'll call this one a wash. Finally, there are the non-platforming challenges. These range from races to turret sections to completing a task within a time limit. They're a nice break from the platforming and aren't too bad to get through, though some are not as good as others. For starters, there are 3 times when you need to drive the gang's van. The thing that plagues these sections is that you can tell the handling is a bit too slick, like you're driving on ice. The races aren't too bad since, like most of the levels, they're pretty short. Although I do find it a bit annoying you need to collect nitro canisters to win and that enemies can destroy them. It doesn't help that the second race has actual ice to avoid. Meanwhile, in Burning Rubber, you have to collect 60 computers to gain access to Clockwork Space, and there's only 119 of them. On top of the slick handling, lava monsters constantly spawn to destroy the computers no matter how many you ram. Easily the most frustrating mission in the game. Then there's the hacking in the final episode. Sly and Carmelita get captured, prompting Bentley to hack the system to free them. The goal is to blast the protective barrier around 13 data cores to collect them. This was no prize either for several reasons. You have limited hit points, the data cores are surrounded by barriers that break up into smaller pieces when you shoot them, there are defenses that shoot their own projectiles, and the track used loops after a short while, making things extra annoying. Like the rest of the levels, they don't take too long to beat, so you're not going to be suffering through them for too long. Once you reach the end of the episode, it's time for a boss fight. These are the highlight of the game since each member challenges you in a different way. Up first is Raleigh, who temporarily inflates into a giant when he eats flies. At first, all I need to do is dodge his efforts to squish you. As the fight goes on, the platforms will sink under the water either by themselves or by staying on them for too long. This culminates on one last platform where Raleigh spins around with his tongue extended, forcing you to jump over like a jump rope. A nice challenge to start on. Up next is Mugshot, who starts off as one of the harder fights in the game. You need to spin mirrors around to reflect light into giant crystals to destroy his guns. All the while, he chases you around, taking pot shots at you when he's in line of sight. The second phase has the mirrors more spread out, with gaps in the floor making dodging his attacks more difficult. Too bad the final phase drops the challenge. You're on this chandelier requiring you to ninja spire jump around to the mirrors. As long as you're in front of a mirror before he fires, you are not getting hit. Still a solid fight regardless. Ms. Ruby is a bit of a weird one. I'm guessing at some point in development, one of the devs was like, hey, what if we turn this platformer into a rhythm game for a minute? That is the only reason I can think of as to why she plays differently. What happens is, she'll set her voodoo at Sly in the form of the face buttons. Press them in the right order in time to the music to avoid getting hit. To the game's credit, the cutscene right before the fight explains what's about to happen, so it's not completely out of left field. As for the fight itself, it's pretty good. The patterns are varied enough to keep things interesting, and the music gets faster as the fight goes on, keeping the challenge up. Different, but still good. Then there's Panda King, who, compared to the previous 3 fights, is a bit of a letdown. He'll throw fire at you from a distance and use martial arts when you get close enough to hit him. Disappointingly, the fire is easy to dodge as long as you move counterclockwise towards him, and his close quarters attacks have a decent wind-up to them, also making them easy to dodge. And unlike the previous bosses, his arena remains static the whole time. Don't get me wrong, it's a solid fight, I just expected a bit more from the penultimate boss. Once Panda King is defeated, Bentley radios Sly with the location of Clockwork's base. Wasting no time, the gang launch an all-out assault on the leader of the Fiendish Five. Along the way, Sly discovers Carmelita managed to follow them, only to get captured by Clockwork. When he tries to break her out, he gets captured as well. Poison gas begins to fill the cell, spelling certain doom. Luckily, the pair manage to escape thanks to a quick hack from Bentley. Realizing that Clockwork is the bigger threat, Carmelita agrees to a temporary truce, going so far as to lend Sly her jetpack, as well as promising him a 10-second head start once this is over. One turret and platforming section later, we're equipped for the final showdown. Now, let me set the scene. An anthropomorphic raccoon, armed with a jetpack, takes on a giant owl that replaced all his organic parts with machinery, allowing him to hunt Sly's family for God knows how long, with the fight taking place in an active volcano. This is ridiculous, yet somehow more believable than the climax of Resident Evil 5. The fight against Clockwork is also a weird one. I'm guessing someone, possibly the same hypothetical dev from earlier, was like, hey, what if we turn this platformer into a flight sim? Again, that is the only reason I can think of as to why he's different too. While you're given about 5 seconds to learn the controls before Clockwork appears, it doesn't take too long to get used to them. Controls aside, the fight is a pretty good challenge. The first phase is an on-rails section where you fly around shooting the weak spots Carmelia provides with her shock pistol. The second phase ramps up the difficulty by forcing you to fly through the centers of rings to avoid damage. These are thrown at you fast and furious. I may have died the most at this point. That's on me though. Once you dodge enough, you're provided another weak point to attack, rinse and repeat until he goes down. After blasting him enough, Clockwork crashes into the lava below. Sly gives chase, and we're given one last platforming section. The final phase definitely lives to final boss stats. It puts together all the platforming skills you've learned throughout the game as you race to his head. Couple that with various other attacks to dodge with tight margins, and you've got one of the better challenges in the game. A few whacks Clockwork's head later, and the day is won. And holy crap does he get messed up. Good thing he's basically a robot at this point, otherwise I don't think the game would have gotten an E rating. After defeating Clockwork, Sly takes a moment to reflect on his journey, even giving kudos to Bentley and Murray for sticking with him through all of it. He breathes easy knowing the threat is finally over. The feeling is short-lived as Carmelia immediately ends their truce. However, she remains true to her word by giving Sly the 10-second head start. You'd think he'd immediately book it. Instead, he waits until the last second to kiss her before dashing off. From what we see, she seems to enjoy it. For the 2 seconds it takes for her to realize that Sly handcuffed her to the railing and stole the key. The gang rides off into the sunset for their next adventure, and the game ends with a post-credit scene showing one of Clockwork's eyes opening, setting up the sequel. Unless you went out of the way to unlock all the saves. In that case, you get a cutscene where Sly fully restores the Thievious Racoonous. I guess you could say this is the true ending. So is Sly Cooper and the Thievious Racoonous still worth playing today? Yeah, I'd say so. It's a solid platformer with a colorful cast of characters, good boss fights, and enough variety to keep things interesting. I do think the lives could have been handled better, a few missions were more annoying than fun, and the difficulty is a bit on the easy side for the most part. Despite its flaws, I think it's a well put together game that has held up well. If you like platformers or you want to try them but don't know where to start, this is a good game to check out. As I said in the beginning, the game did well enough to spawn 3 sequels, and next time we're going to look at the first of them, considered to not only be the best game in the franchise, but also one of the best on the PS2 overall. Does it live up to the hype? Well, come back next time as we look at Sly 2 Band of Thieves. Until then, thank you all for stopping by, and take care.